Hey guys, it's Jonathan McCormack, and I'm an attachment specialist in New York. You can hit me up at attachmenthealinghelp.com. I'd like to just talk about the way the different attachment styles resist life. And at the end, I'll give a short practice meditation. So, a lot of this stuff I got from David Hartman over at the Wellness Institute. And he has written essays about this kind of existential resistance to life. The three attachment categories are, avoidant attachment, and that's the person who reached out as a child, didn't get a response, just shuts down, very dismissive. There's anxious attachment, where the person is hyper activated. You're going to get enmeshed, codependence. And then there's disorganized, where you have a mix between the two, which is a terrible tension. And one thing you often see in attachment problems, especially with fearful avoidant, dismissive avoidant, disorganized, is this feeling that they're not fully alive. But I mean that, not as if they don't have energy. Oftentimes they don't. But I mean, they feel like they're shadows. They feel like they're two-dimensional. They don't have this access to this life, this vitality, this eros. There's certain ways they behave that actually thwarts that life energy. And you can think about it in a million different ways. Freud famously had, the libidinal energy, which is all about life and going out and opening up, and then thanatos, which is kind of like death drive, death energy, which is withdrawal, disintegration, resistance to life and growth. And I have no idea if those things exist. I have no idea. I look at these theories and I just say, is that a useful way to think about these things? And I have to say, there's almost this energy that if you start living a certain way, it is a little like a death drive. It's as if you're more dead than alive. You're blocking vitality. I don't know if this is an actual force, a psychic force in one. And in fact, I don't know how useful it would even be to frame it that way for a patient. But when I'm thinking about this conceptually, it does kind of help. So Hartman would say, if you have an avoidant attachment, you have this compulsive self-reliance. You only rely on yourself. You're in complete denial of the source of your anxiety and your needs. What is your anxiety? You would never know it from an avoidant, but it's the fear of loss of connection and abandonment. Kind of funny, because avoidants usually abandon their partners. Their partners get too close, they just cut them off. Not just their partners, their friends too. Their friends get too close, their friends become a burden. Boom, just chop them off, amputate them from their lives. Very easy, because they're never closely connected to begin with, And this person almost sidesteps life. There's a life force, and let's call it the death force, and this person trucks in neither stream. They're their own person. Then there's ambivalent, anxious attachment, Oftentimes the defensive strategies are to create distractions, to redirect that person's attention away from the anxiety. What is that anxiety? For ambivalent, it's in any attachment style. If there's ambivalence there's going to be fear of annihilation and engulfment, a loss of self. So if you're an avoidant, that kind of ambivalence will be right on the surface. Avoidant people, if they're fearful avoidant, they are fearful. What are they afraid of? Enmeshment. They're afraid that you're going to keep coming in until you more or less devour their very self. Their self will not be sustained unless it's cut off from the world. Because as children, they had no strong boundaries. Their parents would come in and they would have no way of protecting against, say, the mother's anxiety, the father's anger, whatever. They'll just rush in and frighten the child, you know. So in that case, there's an impasse in the struggle between libido and the death drive, the drive towards life, the drive towards death. And neither can gain advantage. You're kind of frozen there. And that movement freezes and paralysis sets in. And that takes up all your energy. That takes all your energy. The third defense in general for attachment styles is control. And that's when you're going to try and regulate your distress by controlling the environment, right? You're going to say, forget libido, forget the death drive. No. You're just going to meticulously manipulate your environment to make your own perfect world with no ambivalence. You allow black and white thinking, you know. Tough to have black and white thinking in a relationship, because these people, they'll put their partners in like, my partner's the victim. And I have to be there for them. Or they're the perpetrator. Whoa, they're the person trying to attack me. You know, black and white, you're the villain or the hero. Your partner is perfect, or the most evil person who's ever lived. It's like, oh boy, that's frustrating. That'd be frustrating to relate to someone like that. So their frustration, you see this in Disorganized a lot. They're trying to obtain comfort while avoiding vulnerability. It's a little tough. And the stress is remarkable. They don't have strong ego resilience, you know. And it's almost like you hear this from a lot of Disorganized. They'll say things like, I'm talking slightly more on the extreme side. They'll say things like, they don't want to be here. I mean, on Earth, like alive, you know. There can be, it doesn't have to be overt suicidal ideation, but it's just this lack of commitment to life. You know, they don't say, this is what I'm doing. I don't know if it's the right answer. I'm not sure, but I'm doing it. They will not embrace life. They'll not jump in. If this is your partner, they're not going to jump in. They're not going to do it. They're not going to pull that trigger. Because this type of resistance actually gives them gains. There's good things about it. It reduces the fear of failure and success. Why? Because you're not trying. So you don't got to worry about that, you know. It can reduce the fear, the anxiety, the fear of intimacy or engulfment, and it dulls the deep longing for connection that underlies either of those. And there's other things. You can actually get nurturance from withdrawal. Nurturance, withdrawal, and punishment are three big things people get from this. You're thinking, like, why are they acting like this? To defend themselves. That's true. But they're also getting some secondary and third gains, you know. I mean, for instance, a lot of times they will get attention when they're suffering, you know. They can get nurturance when they're going through all this pain and isolation and suffering. And as children, sometimes that's the only time they get attention. Like, parents just ignore them completely, unless they had like some disease, unless they're very ill, then someone would come. And these people repeat the same thing. They go on to life and they become very isolated. They're always like, these are like dangerous people, you know, disorganized, a lot of people who engage in some dangerous acts like promiscuous sex or high-risk activities, drug use. And yeah, when you get the needle sticking in your arm, yeah, daddy and mommy, they'll pay attention then when they get that phone call from the cops or whoever. And that's the only way you'll get attention. And there's actually a belief that that's the only way they can receive it is when they're suffering. They can't receive love or affection unless they're suffering. Because why would they deserve it? And why would they even really need it? And isn't that a bit greedy? But that's the only time they got it as a kid. So that turns into a belief. What did that mean? Oh, that must have meant that I can only get love and affection when I am suffering. You know? Oftentimes the resistant person gets a sense of power. They're neurotic, you know, more of like the anxiously attached, right? The more they're in distress, the more they kind of manipulate other people towards them. I've seen couples where, I won't say what it is, but this one wife had this, this is many, many years ago, but it was something like, I won't say the exact thing, what she actually had, but it's very close to, like she would faint every time she drove, something like that. She would faint every time she drove, so she couldn't drive anywhere. So what did that mean? The husband had to do everything for her. Well, after some time, it became transparent that she was kind of sort of doing that on purpose. Like, yeah, she fainted a few times years ago, and then it kind of just became a thing. And as long as she's helpless, he's going to be there for her. And that's like the unconscious contract she just has. And he probably realizes it too, unconsciously, you know. When people withdraw from life, they also get, it protects them from accountability and from the pain of loss, from the pain of disappointment, all the setbacks in life. What do you gain if you're an avoidant? Numbness. That's good. People pay a lot of money for good drugs to get numb. Disconnection, disassociation. Disassociation, is it really that bad? Well, no. If you're living in hell, it's good to disassociate from it. If you're wandering around the earth feeling like you're the loneliest man in the world, you're wandering around feeling like you're a cockroach, yeah, disassociate, of course. That's a benefit of having these resistances toward life. Life hurts. When you start waking up, it hurts. It hurts because you start feeling. And a lot of the emotions you have are painful, very painful. And you might not be able to wake up a little bit every week for years. It'd be nice, but no. Something might just come, rip your heart open, often in the form of a girl, yeah, or a guy. That happens. And if it becomes too raw, that person just shuts down. If they're brave, but boy, it is hard to suffer alone if you're an avoidant. If this avoidant person could get their heart torn open and then have someone there that they're open with, yeah, maybe they could face the pain. But an avoidant is all alone, even with other people. And it's really almost too much to ask them to face that alone. If you're not avoidant, that might seem really unfair. I know. So if you look at the studies, when someone says, my life is meaningful, you know, what they mean is they're committed to some concept in life. Something. This has a framework or a goal which they view their lives from. They don't view their lives from nowhere. It's from the perspective of this meaning. And they perceive their lives as relating to this, fulfilling this concept. Like, this is my purpose. They experience this fulfillment as a feeling of significance. I feel significant. Why? This is what my life's about. I'm visibly seeing myself make goals towards it. And therefore, I feel significant. You know, oftentimes I see men come in, and I've heard other attachment specialists say this. I agree. I know it probably get me in trouble, but that men, when they're depressed and they get that kind of helplessness, they need to feel powerful. And women come in, this generalization. When I have an individual in front of me, I have no idea. That's an individual. I have no idea how they're going to act. I don't generalize. But, in general, if you want to look at it broadly, women need to have their feelings validated. So yeah, if you're a guy, you come in and you say like, I'll go to the gym. You know, you tell them I lift weights. And that could tremendously help. A lot of these things. Also, if it gets you embodied, it just helps a lot. You know, I do go to the gym. Except the one I go to has like 16-year-olds flinging like 800-pound deadlifts, and I don't feel that powerful around these kids. I need to find a gym full of old people, like old women, or so like in their 90s or so, just for my own self-esteem. But that was probably the most masculine I've ever felt, the most rawly masculine man incarnating what it is to be a man. It was probably when I was like 8 years old, hanging out with my grandma, and she used to like ask me to pass like the 2% milk carton because she was too weak. And I was like, here it is, Grandma. She'd be like, oh, look at your strength, Jonathan. You're like a superhero. And then growing up, guys kind of stay that same. Like that's it. I know so many men, they live, just see a smile on their girl's face. Literally, that is what they live for. If you said, what motivates you in the morning? It's to put a smile on her face, to make her glow. That's what does it, you know, very simple. So someone in ambivalence is in a stalemate between libido and death, life and death. They just can't make the decision. Jump, get busy living, get busy dying. And there's a struggle between the two. Neither gains an advantage. Movement ceases and paralysis kind of sets in. The avoidant just denies both those things, lives in his own world detached, tries to live without risk, puts on all these unconscious blinders, just sidestepping life, living without actually feeling alive. And control is to kind of get control around the kind of the death instinct and the eros, because you have to compromise in life between the two. And a lot of times people are like very, very in control, like disorganized people who are like hyper in control. They want a life of perfect predictability. Everything has to be like the same. Of course, life isn't like that. Life is spontaneous and a stream. You're not going to be living if you do that. So those are the main. Avoidance usually, they at least try to be emotionally self-sufficient. They don't always succeed. They try to live their lives without any support from the other. Usually they prefer books and objects to people. But because they need people, avoidance will just deactivate their own needs for comfort and care. Often at a conscious level. This isn't deep unconsciousness. Unconsciously, they are frustrated and resentful. You know, avoidant people, dismissive, they are just riven with resentment. You know, why? Because they had to set aside their emotional needs and be passive. And they seem very calm and with themselves, but there's often hostility. And you see this. These are the guys who go out in public and they give themselves the body language of, do not come near me, you know. Just, there's this kind of harshness. Perhaps they're very sarcastic, and they push people away. It's that hostility. And they're just furious because they look up, and they see people's needs getting met. This person had a family. They got a husband. They got a wife. They get hugged. This person has a fulfilling life in their career, in this and that. If you think about all the human givens, you know, you need a friend, at least one friend. You want 5, at least one friend. A lover, husband, or something, right? A partner. A purpose, you know, reason to get up in the morning. A job. Some sort of spirituality. Some people would even say privacy. That's actually quite important for someone's dignity. You need a place in society and visualize a future. And a lot of these people don't have any of that. And they're wandering around like ghosts. And other people are talking about their futures and going on vacation. And what are they going to do in 10 years? And because they have this continuity of self, they're you know. And avoidance do not. They don't have that continuity. There's huge parts of their lives they just never mentalized. They just never processed. And it can feel deeply, deeply frustrating, animated, because they're saying they're talking to someone, and this person's talking about all those human givens, all the human, my friends, with this, my friend, then my wife, and let me tell you about my kid, and the job, and perhaps they have a job, but it's nothing they're proud of. It's nothing that fulfills a purpose in them. They can't talk about that. If they're alone, they're not going to be able to talk about the husband or the wife or the kids. Usually they don't, they take no risk, so they don't have very complicated jobs, or if they do, they just kind of float it into them, but they don't take those huge risks. And oftentimes they'll feel like a coward, like, Jesus, I just wouldn't take the risk. I just floated along, waited for something to happen. Nothing happened. They have to keep intrusiveness out. And so they usually push people away. They push people away, In ambivalent situations, it's like being pulled in both directions, negative and positive, and being suspended between them. And you can never find a synthesis. So like a fearful avoidant or a disorganized. A disorganized will be both clinging and distancing, because they identify with both polar opposites, and they're unable to commit to one path or the other. Like, listen, just cut this guy loose or marry him. They will never do either. They'll be, if it gets close to marriage, they'll flip out. If it gets close, looks like the relationship's going to break up, they'll flip out, and there's never any resolution. Think about the tension in that. People describe these people as kind of like, wishy-washy, very passive, indecisive, preoccupied. They're often absorbed in something. Like, well, what about your life? They never even think about their life, But even back in the day, Otto Rank recognized that a person's ego needs to kind of unburden itself to relax. We all have these tensions. We all have these inhibitions. And how do we deal with it? Sex and love. We unburden ourselves with another in relationship. Not avoidance, they don't have that. But for disorganized, kind of like the means to maintain that control becomes paramount. That's what their life becomes about, controlling that person's behavior, because the experience of letting go feels so undefended, so unstructured, unbounded, too open. It's almost like they're going to disappear and be annihilated, because they didn't get that holding space to hold in that solid sense of self as a child, So their holding environment is usually the sex and love of the other person. This is a fearful individual, and they feel groundless and meaningless. They don't have this solid ground of their own self, so of course they have to concentrate on that other person. They can even get very serious. They can feel this profound meaninglessness of life if the other person leaves. Erickson called it ego chill, but he said it's like a shudder, which comes with the sudden awareness of our non-existence. Yeah, and sometimes attachment problem, avoidant, fearful, avoidant, disorganized, will all of a sudden get that sense like, because they're so truly unattached from everything, truly not connected, that their sense of self is very flimsy. And yeah, if you're not connected to another human, you're not in relation, it almost feels like you're not even fully human, And so they do get that alarmed aloneness, as some people call it. So with avoidance, usually they call that a maximizing strategy. A minimizing strategy. And what they mean is, like, an avoidant will just minimize everything. They'll devalue everything, the importance of everything. It's no big deal. It's no big deal. It's no big deal. No matter what happens. It's no big deal. Yeah, I cheat on you. It's really no big deal. Yes, that's true. I've been alone for 58 years and living in my low part. It's no big deal, though. What's the big deal? nothing's a big deal. Like everything is just dismissed because it'd be so painful to hold. They have no one to hold it with. For that person, an avoidant, they have no confidence that when they seek help, they'll receive it. I used to know a guy, I used to say this all the time. I used to be like, hey, what's going on? Having some problems. He used to be like, and I'd be like, oh, you ever think about trying to get some help? You know, he used to always say the same thing. Just because you need help doesn't mean there is any. It's like, oh, okay. And he tried a million different things, and I couldn't argue, you know, I wouldn't contradict that. But an avoidant person expects to be rebuffed. If you've seen people, sometimes I talk about, I used to play poker for a living, and you sit there and you do nothing for like hours, and then you're having a heart attack because your rent's on the table, and you know, it's not good for the brain. But you watch people walk in the room, you're trying to size them up. Some people walk in the room expecting something good to happen. Like, I bet you there are friends here, completely confident. Other people walk in expecting trouble. Not just trouble, though. Like, they're going to be rebuffed. Whatever environment they move in, somebody's going to try and push them out. The world itself wants them out. That's how it feels, you know? So these people expect to be rebuffed whenever they walk in the room. They expect knives out. That's just how they always are. You try to talk to them, boom, their knives are out, and they feel you have your knife out at them. No matter what, you know? That's just how it is, all around. So this person just doesn't acknowledge that they need help. Why would they? They don't seek it. Why would they? They're not going to get it. And occasionally they will start trying to, like, hey, can I? And if one person like rebuffs them, like, hey, I need a ride next week to work. And the person says no. There's like, oh. Or if this is their girlfriend or boyfriend, no. It's like, that's it. I will never ask you for a favor again. That's how extreme they get, you know? Yeah, so this attempt to keep others at a distance to reduce the risk of rejection and abandonment. They can do it in two different ways. They can do it in hostility or straight up antisocial behavior. Some of these guys, a lot of the guys have been to prison, and they have antisocial personality disorder. But a lot of those guys are really kind of avoidant. And it's this fear that motivates that avoidance. You have to ensure, this is the number one thing for an avoidant, in his body, what is your job? It's not to thrive, it's not to live, it's not to reproduce. It's to ensure that you never experience the pain of that loss of connection again, that you felt as a child, that pain of being rejected. Being rejected today hurts. Think about how much that hurts today if someone you loved rejected you. It's painful. But think about it if you're a small child. It might not even been a real rejection. Perhaps their parents were busy, working, doing other things. But to the child, they experience it that way. A rejection at that age is life or death, you know. If this becomes extreme, it kind of goes towards like the schizoid, who kind of hovers between the two opposite fears, fear of isolation, being independent, because the ego is just kind of going to be a vacuum. You know, when you've been alone a long time, you don't you don't put yourself out there. You're just like alone inside yourself, and there's nothing holding you there. It's the unbearable lightness of being. But on the other side is a relationship, and that fear gets kicked up in that case because of this feeling of imprisonment, of bondage, that you're getting absorbed in their personality, you know? So you really need some protection. But when you go to get that protection, you're going to be absorbed and annihilated. That's a hell of a place to be. And sometimes these people kind of project all that onto other people too, and idealize a lot, you know. Like I said, you know, their boyfriend, their girlfriend is like perfect on a pedestal, or the most, like evil thing to ever happen to the planet Earth. I mean, like cartoonishly evil. So ambivalence, you're kind of redirecting your attention. And for that, you don't want too much concentration or quiet. Yeah. You want chaos. The ambivalent person, this, that, like a fearful avoidant. You want a lot of chaos, or a disorganized person even. The distraction, because you need to be distracted, it requires a lot of drama. So quiet environments are actually experienced as threatening. You hear this all the time. I don't know if I like this guy. I don't know if I like this girl because it's boring. In other words, I'm not having like a heart attack every 3 minutes because we don't know if we're broken up, this, that. There's no chaos, And so actually peacefulness is experienced as a threat. Yeah. And for those people, usually their parents are very intrusive. So when they're super intrusive, the child desperately wanted attention. Please pay attention. Then the parent would, but it'd be so intrusive. And they'd have to shut down. And then the parents would just be very inconsistent and just leave. And it's like, oh my God, I do need a relationship with them. And then it would overactivate both. That's what happens in disorganized. These people can have a lot of chaotic impulsivity. The fear is the loss of self. And they will never, and they cling to both. They're both very needy and very distancing. Needy, distancing, which will drive other people crazy. Very kind of borderline behavior. And they will never commit to one path, because it feels if they commit to one path, they'll lose their very selves. Their very selves is wrapped up in that duality. So that's very difficult because they see that as their self. They're not attached to that, deep inner self full of compassion. And these people also are always engaged in a perpetual search for a goal, for a value in their lives. And resolutions they never know what they want to do with their lives. They never know what to do. I don't know what to do, ever. And there's no resolution. There's this refusal to commit. And when you don't commit, how you think an identity is created? It's by repetition forward, the same things again and again and again. But you refuse to commit to something, your creation, the creation of your identity will remain forever undefined. And of course, if your identity is barely defined, you're going to experience a lot of distress upon separation, And the other thing about these poor people is that they refuse to be comforted too at the same time. I'm talking about more like borderline personality disorder, like moving into BPD. Because people with a borderline personality, they have this role absorption, and for that, because they have an ill-defined self, they take on one role, and that's who they are. If they're a mother, that's all they are. Whew, wait till the kid moves out. If they're this person's wife, this person's husband, that's exactly who they are, and that's all they are. A divorce would destroy their identity. And they just kind of they just have that soul, this is who they are, this is my purpose, kind of fanatically. Their subjective sense kind of usually lacks coherence. And they just kind of have a lack of commitment to jobs, to values, they just don't have the, sometimes, we call it like the borderline resume. Like, it's like, so in the past 2 years, you've had like 78 jobs. Right, yeah, that's, okay. That dude's borderline, don't hire him. So there's kind of this inability to integrate positive and negative representations of self and others. So you always have this shifting view. Is this person my enemy? Are they friend? They're my best lover. No, they're going to attack me. You just have this victim or victimizer, dominant or submissive. And the roles can shift. 1 minute, your partner, if they're borderline, is like this poor little victim. And the next minute, they're abusing you, And then they flip the roles around. And boy, that can just be a huge head trip. Very confusing, Person who's experienced a lot of chaos in their life, they're going to try and control things. The idea is like this: if I can get some control, life will be predictable, and it'll be knowable, because as children, things are so inconsistent, things are unpredictable and unknowable, and you cannot relax, you know. And so you can kind of be controlling in two different ways. You can be very punitive. I'm going to control by punishing this person if they don't give me what I want. Or you can be controlling caregiving. In other words, I'm just going to fanatically caregive this person to control them. I'm going to be their virtual slave and just take care of every little thing, and they will stay with me forever. And clearly, they'll reciprocate. They'll give me what I need, because look at everything I'm doing. And they better. If they don't, I'll make them feel very guilty, because look at all that I'm doing for them. Even if they don't ask for it, still. That person is still desperately seeking physical closeness while trying to keep mental distance and create mental distance. To obtain comfort, avoid vulnerability. They're going to be, of course, they're going to be stressed out. Of course, they're going to be, people say, oh, it's very, very schizo. Well, I mean, the pressures are enormous. When alone, this person will feel unsafe. In fact, extremes, they'll feel like they might even cease to exist. And then when they're not alone, they're with someone, they feel unsafe. That this person will impinge on them. And there'll be overwhelming chaos. One of the things you cure and fix attachment problems with is mentalization. Thinking about thinking, kind of. Making sense of your life. Narrating it. Because for a lot of these people, when they're a child, their parents did not mirror their internal state. So they didn't get a real sense of who they are, their own sense of self. In that case, they were open and too vulnerable to the mothers or fathers, whoever the primary caregiver is, the rage, hatred, fear, whatever. It just came right in. They had no ego self to block it, and they weren't able to make a coherent self-representation without that mirroring. So that child has to find a vehicle for that frightened part of himself, and one nice way is to externalize it on other people, usually their partners. That works, Usually when an infant is expressing impatience, there'll be kind of that outrage, it's amazing. You see these little cute babies 1 minute, and the next minute they're just devil children, just you think their eyes are going to pop out of their head. They're red-faced and screaming in rage. That's actually really common, and that's a defensive shield. That's creating boundaries, and and it's a response. It's a call out for a need. And if you're going to get cured, you have to get in touch with that anger. Usually, though, in attachment problems, the person will have a very hard time getting in touch with the anger. Very hard time. And it's that anger that gives the energy to push and move through life. It's one of the largest things. So with avoidance, they're rarely angry. And they won't get close to anyone because they're more or less unable to derive comfort from friendships or intimacy. That intimacy gives you love and that warm feeling. They don't know that. They have no idea. Intimacy, this is what people live for, being open. But also to be in contact with that self that's so closed up. That self that's suffocating and choking for want of air. To be seen would be too painful. Too painful to get involved in. There's some other interesting things, but I just want to do a quick exercise with you about clearing things, right? So let's just take a moment. This is kind of a clearing meditation for activations, and if you have any trauma in the past, any sexual abuse, don't do this. You can listen to it, but don't do it. Do this with a therapist or someone else. This is kind of a simple meditation. This isn't that deep. but just make sure you do this with someone. So this isn't meant for trauma or even attachment problems. This is kind of just something you see in the Wellness Institute and the other places. They have this clearing meditation, or I adapted it from that, so it's a little different. Okay. Get into the meditative posture with your back straight but loose and your feet firmly planted on the ground. And we're going to take 3 deep breaths. Take a super deep breath. Hold it below the belly and slowly release. Yeah. And now take another super deep breath. Hold it below the belly and slowly release. Great. Third one, super deep breath. Hold it below the belly and slowly release. Great. Now I would just invite you to do a quick body scan. You can focus your awareness on your forehead and just notice any tension there. And then moving your awareness down around the eyes. And you can just soften the muscles around your eyes. Softening the eyes. Moving down into the cheeks and softening the cheeks. Moving into the jaw loose and soft. Your awareness moving down your neck, into your shoulders, down your arms, down your torso, down, just noticing. Loosen the belly, loosen the hips. A wave of rolling, warm awareness moving down your legs, down your calves, all the way down to your feet, firmly planted on the ground, like roots of a tree. Good. And now that we're relaxed, I would invite you to bring in an activation that happened recently, something your partner did that caused a reaction. Just take a moment, identify it. Something they said or they didn't say. Find that memory. And now go back there, be there now, looking at your partner's face, looking around the room, noticing what time it is, and being there now, witnessing this behavior. Notice what's happening in your body. Notice the sensations in your stomach, in your chest. What's happening? And now notice from those sensations the emotions. What are you feeling? I am feeling what? Yeah. And now lean into that feeling, leaning into that feeling, and follow this feeling back to a time in your early life when you felt the same way or had the same experience. Float back to childhood. Float back. You might be surprised how young you are. And you don't even have to try. The mind will just give us a memory. Yeah. And now that you have your memory, see that child in that memory, freeze that moment, and go into that child's body. You become that child because that is you. Yeah. Yeah. And notice what that child's experiencing. What he's feeling, he or she is feeling. Yeah. Yeah. And then notice what the beliefs are forming around you. If you're 5 or 8 or 10, just, this is happening. What do you believe? What does this mean? I'm unlovable. I'm bad. What beliefs are getting created in this moment? Yeah. What conclusion are you drawing about yourself as that child? Yeah. Yeah. And what strategies are you going to come up with for dealing with it? Anger, shutting down, running away. How are you going to deal with this pain? Yeah. 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 And now, you as an adult go into that memory. And you can bring inner nurturers with you if you'd like, a spiritual figure. And you go to that child. And you see the beliefs forming around that child. You see these beliefs like smoke in the air and you just wave them away. You see these beliefs and thoughts like chalk on a chalkboard all written out and you just erase it. Poof, it's gone. And you can lean down to your little 8-year-old self and tell them what's really happening. This isn't about you. This has nothing to do with you. Those aren't the beliefs. This is your parents' problem, your uncle's problem. This is about them. And that they can give you what you need. Yeah. Yeah. And ask that small child what they need to feel better, to understand this new conclusion. Yeah. Perhaps they need a hug, they need to be heard. Give them that attention and love right now. Mm-hmm. And now ask that child if you could take over for this behavior, because that's just a small child. That's too much pressure. Say, I'm here now. I'm an adult. I'm going to make a new decision about these beliefs, and I'm going to make a new decision about how I'm going to behave. What is that decision? This is how I want to behave next time when my partner does this thing. And how would you like to feel next time? Comfortable, stable? Yeah. Okay. Take that child. And if you want, you can take that child with you. That child can grow up. You can bring in your heart. You can take him from that memory. But that child is no longer stuck there. You are no longer stuck there. You are no longer stuck there. You are free. And now visualize yourself in that memory, what happened earlier with your partner, and you're there now. And now picture yourself hearing it, seeing it, witnessing it, only feeling just how you want it to feel. How did you want to feel? Confident? Calm? How would that look in your body? Would you be shoulders back, chin up, chest out? Notice these sensations in your body. What sensations would you have in your body? Would your stomach be relaxed? And notice how you're being with your partner with this new belief and this new behavior. Yeah. Because you change the old conclusion, you change the old behavior, and you change the old decision. And you see yourself there. And you feel yourself there embodied as that person who can deal with this situation in just the way you need to. And you are that person. Now, taking your time, knowing you've had all the time you need to make these shifts and changes permanent and deeply embedded in the body, and knowing next time this activation happens, you can just go into your body, put your shoulders back, chest up, and your body will remember to embody this state of being of confidence and safety and calmness. And knowing that, you can come back now and open your eyes when you're ready. Good. And you might want to notice how you feel right now. It's a good time to do journaling. You can write 6 questions. When my partner does X, I feel that. And it takes me back to this childhood memory. 3. A conclusion I made about myself at that time was a belief. And the decision I made at that time for how I was going to behave was five, I changed the old conclusion to this new healthy conclusion. And 6, I changed the old decision to this new behavior. And you revisit that 2 or 3 times. I would revisit this 2 or 3 times in an hour. This is kind of part of memory reconsolidation. The mind opens up a memory, and it's that can be reprinted within 5 hours if it's repeated. But you can just do this meditation, just think back on it quickly, getting that somatic feeling. And that can kind of help change things. If you guys have any other questions, though, or comments or observations, I would love to hear them. Thank you.